Good afternoon. 10 years ago, just over 10 years ago, I was standing on this very stage pretending to be a tree. I was doing a theatre degree, and little did I know that I'd be standing here today telling you that I am a two-time Atlantic world record-breaking ocean rower. Get in. Were you expecting a rushing shot putter? With a moustache, perhaps. Yeah, this is really a very personal journey, and I hope that you take something from it. Yeah, when I was standing here in the theatre degree, I had no idea what I was going to do, no idea at all. I had no plan for my next 10 years, and I have to say, I was feeling pretty miserable about that. I went from this degree into a job as a secretary, as lots of people do when they leave university. They get a temp job, and I kind of knew that that wasn't what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a secretary and, you know, with a theatre degree and just be a touch typist for the rest of my life. But the catalyst, the kind of like the tipping point for that situation changing, is my and was my now ex-boyfriend. His name was Tomo, and he's ex for a reason. He and I had a tempestuous relationship, to say the least, and one night in bed we had an argument. And I'd just done the London Marathon, and I kind of felt like I wanted to do the next big thing, which I thought was going to be Land's End to John O'Groats on a bike, 2 weeks, lovely, lovely, diddly-diddly, brilliant. And he said, no, you can't go. I said, why not? He goes, I'm going with my best friend. It's a boys-only trip, and girls are not allowed. I threw a strop. He said, let's row across the Atlantic. Is that the first thing that you would think of? And it wasn't mine. But you know what? I imagined myself in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, drowning in a little boat, maybe getting a little bit skinnier. And I thought, oh my God, this could be actually an opportunity to change my life, an amazing opportunity to do it. I had never rowed. Only time I'd been at sea was in Brighton, stuck my toe in, got cold, got out. Went on a cross-channel ferry, vomited all the way from Dover to Calais and back again. But I just thought, you know what? I'm going to give it a go. And I honestly thought it would be a little wooden rowing boat, coming number 29, your time is up, styling, out in the middle Atlantic Ocean. But to my horror, I found out on the internet, if there's bloody stupid things to do, us Brits are the first to do it. Because in 1966, Shea Blythe and John Ridgway rowed across the Atlantic Ocean. I never knew that. I also found out that Shea Blythe was organising ocean rowing races, and there was going to be an ocean rowing race a year and a half's time. And I phoned up the team and asked them if I could join. But first I thought I needed to be a man, because only men row oceans. Second, I thought I needed to be a rower, because only rowers row oceans. And then I thought, well, if I didn't pass that, which obviously I didn't, I'd have to get on a, little treadmill, peg on nose, maybe a hose in my mouth, pass all the tests. And this lovely lady said to me, as long as you pay the money, what? You are in the race. I said, no way. She goes, yeah, 150 quid. Brilliant. Right, the money's in. Phone up Tomo, asked him if he wanted to go. He said yes. I said good, because there's a meeting next Saturday. We were in an ocean rowing race. We were going to row 3,000 miles. You know what? It was an extraordinarily positive time. Oh my gosh. We decided, Tomo has epilepsy, he's had it for 30 years, and we decided we'd raise money for a small epilepsy charity in his hometown of Halifax. And this was us naming our boat. I'm going to reveal the boat a little bit later, but it's only 23 foot long and about 6 foot wide. So it's quite big to row, but very small for the ocean. It comes flat pack. You actually build it yourself in your garage. I was never going to do that. We bought a second-hand boat. She knew the way. So here we were, actually naming our boat, and look at our smiling faces. It was extraordinary. We shook buckets on Brighton Promenade. We went to schools. We talked to businesses, to clubs. We raised the money to get to the start of the race, £100,000. An extraordinary amount of money. And we also raised £250,000 for the Fund for Epilepsy. We were doing really well. Trouble is, when we got to the start, things went wrong. This is us inside our little cabin. If you can imagine, it's about the size of a two-man tent. We're rowing from La Gomera, which is down in the Canaries, across to Barbados. So we're down there in La Gomera. We've gone out in our little wooden rowing boats. There's lots of other teams taking part. We row out. The hooter goes off. Thousands of people are there to see us off. And we last 6 days. And the reason for that was because Tomo had a seizure 6 days in. We knew it was going to happen, but we didn't realise it was going to happen so quickly. And this is us in our cabin. I'd cut all my hair off because I thought it would be easy to keep it clean. And as we lay in the cabin, I remember looking up at the ceiling of my cabin, and I'd handwritten all the names of the individual sponsors who'd supported us, all those people who'd given us just a tenner or maybe a fiver. Most of them thought we were going to die. That's why they gave us a tenner. When they saw our rowing boat, they gave us 20 quid because that was the coffin in which we were going to die. So here we were inside our cabin and things had gone wrong. For Tomo, he felt that he'd let himself down. I felt that we'd let everybody down. It was just the most horrible place to be in. A year and a half, we'd learned how to row, we'd learned astronavigation, first aid at sea, we'd done the training, we were out there proving to ourselves and to everybody else that we could do it. And 6 days in, we had to stop. I phoned the support yacht and asked them to come and get us. It took them 24 hours to come just 50 miles. If you imagine what it might be like out in the middle of the Atlantic waiting to be rescued, it could be up to a week, maybe 10 days for them to come and get you. But in that moment, I knew I hadn't spent a year and a half preparing for this trip to change my life, not to get that boat across. So I phoned the only person who I knew was bloody minded enough to come with me. Mum! It's all going wrong. Will you come with me? She said yes. I said good. She goes, do I need to bring anything else? I said, bring some tea bags. Meet me in the harbour. Phone down. We meet my mum at the harbour, and here she is. That's my mum, Sarah. Yeah, she was prepared to come with me. Scary stuff. All I thought was, get her in the boat, row off. It wasn't going to happen. Because unfortunately, the organisers asked my mum if she'd ever rowed. She was there in a pair of borrowed salopettes with a bag of tea bags. She didn't look like your ocean rowing type. And they disqualified us from the race. It sounds flippant, doesn't it, asking your mum to come with you? And it kind of gets worse. About 6 months before, I hadn't really spoken to my mum for nearly 10 years. She and I had a really quite difficult relationship. I think it's because my mum's ginger and a Sagittarius. But I think mainly because we're perhaps too similar. My mum had her first child at 16. She had 3 kids by the time she was 21. I think when you're that young, it's actually, you're a child, bringing up children. And my mum and dad struggled, as most parents do. But when I got to 16, I didn't want to be near my mum anymore. She's an angry lady. So I decided to leave. And I found it really difficult to speak to her after that. And when I told her I was going to row across the Atlantic, she said, don't be so stupid. Tomo has epilepsy. You're too skinny, you'll never get across. But I convinced her that it was going to be the most amazing adventure. But it was like camping at sea, but instead of hills and cows, you have waves and whales. She loved the idea, and she's a gardener, so she likes that sort of stuff. So I thought this was an opportunity to ask my mum if she would possibly go with us if things went wrong. She never thought she would. But she took that step towards me, and she said, yeah, I'd love to go. And now she was. I had a month and a half to teach my mum how to row 3,000 miles because we found out there was going to be another race. We were the only women taking part, just the 2 of us. I'd been before, but I'd cried most of the time, and there was my mum, the gardener. Hello! And this is the little boat we went in. The day we left, worst day of my life, Dad was hugging me on the pontoon crying, bring it back for the family, honey! Bring it back for the... It was just awful. We rowed out to the start. My mum said, let's look good, get across the horizon and have a cup of tea. That was the plan, and you know what? It worked. The problem was we got so seasick, we lost 2.5 stone. We were seasick for 2 months, practically. It was just awful, and my backside never hurt so much in all its life. It took us 4 months to row across the Atlantic. 4 months. A man in his 60s rowing on his own got in a month before we did. We were built for comfort, not for speed, and Mum and I were determined to get across in our own good time. My dad was constantly on the phone saying, deep, deep, row hard, row together. Pain is only temporary, it's weakness leaving the body, is it? And then the girls would phone up and say, oh, as long as you have a good time, drink lots of tea, get lots of sleep, stay friends. And that was the plan. That's what we were going to do. And that's exactly what we did, which is why it took us 4 bloody months. We had this thing. It's interesting that I think some of the speakers have talked about hope. My mum and I had this phrase on the boat, and it was called no hope on the boat. Sounds quite depressing. But we were heading off towards Florida at one point, and my dad wasn't in Florida, he was in Barbados. We were getting very stressed out. I was going, oh God, I wish it changed tomorrow. I hope it changes. Oh, I hope the weather changes. I hope the wind changes. To the point where my mum hit me around the face with a wet flying fish, and she said, stop. Stop hoping all the time. It doesn't help in this situation. The weather will be as it will be. The only thing we can do is get to the oars and do what we can. And that's what we did. We rowed when we could. Of course, the weather changed, and we zoomed into Barbados. 2.5 knots. I could have walked across the Atlantic quicker. Here we are in Barbados. Lost 2.5 stone, got an amazing tan. Ocean rowers do it naked. And when we got there, we'd actually managed to get ourselves into the Guinness Book of Records as the first mother and daughter to row any ocean. And I discovered a woman who was funny, doolally, daft, silly, just like me. And I never knew I'd have that opportunity. If I hadn't asked her the question, you never know today, we may never have spoken. An extraordinary adventure. But I decided I wasn't done. I wanted to do more. I wanted to be the skipper of the first Women's 4, to go across in the fastest time. I wanted a team called the Row Girls, and I wanted it to be in a pink boat. Here we are. Look at us. We are hot to trot. Bring it on. All we had to do was get across quickly, and we were the girls to do it. Needless to say, we went into a new race. There was another Women's 4. They were from Guernsey. They called themselves Mission Atlantic. Imagine the tash. That was them. Okay? We had to beat them. They were the only people we had to beat. Remember Ben Fogle and James? On telly, that we were in the same race. They cried a lot, and for very good reason. It was the worst weather in the Atlantic for nearly 200 years. We faced 40 knot winds and 40-foot waves, and I told them it was going to be great. Mum and I had such a good time. It's going to be gin and tonics at sunset. Brilliant. No, 40-foot waves, 40-knot winds. We were hit by the tail end of a hurricane and 2 tropical storms. Unfortunately, Jo, one of the girls on our boat, slipped and hurt her back, and she decided she would get off the boat, and in doing so, she would disqualify us from the race. She made that decision. I told her she'd probably regret it for the rest of her life. And there she goes. I think she was expecting a helicopter to come over and a handsome man to drop out of the sky. No, they sent a rubber dinghy. And that was 1,000 miles away from land. Jo's off the boat. Our dream of being the fastest women before, completely over. Disqualified from the race. It got worse. Our rudder was stripped off the back of the boat by a huge wave. We jerried up a rudder with T-shirts and a big bucket at the end of it. And guess what? Bloody great big shark decided to come and eat it. We got into our cabin and we screamed like girls. And people often ask me, what was it? Was it a kind of a bull shark? Was it a white shark? No, it was that shark. That is the best artist's impression I could possibly give. But we were resilient, again, resilience, and we made it across as the first Women's 3. It wasn't the same as the trip with my mum, but you know what? I learned a lot about that particular process. And one of them is that sometimes it's not what you do, it's what you inspire other people to do. Because I spoke to Jo after that, and we talked about it a lot, her getting off the boat. And she decided she would get into another team and go for the record. And she did. And it was a boat called Unfinished Business. And at the end, it was called Finish Business, and they got the world record for the fastest women's fall. An amazing journey, and it hasn't stopped. My life has completely changed. I do speaking now, that's the smarter me. And I have so much great feedback from people. I had a woman who came up and she said, I hadn't spoken to my daughter for 30 years, and you've given me an opportunity to go and try again. That sort of stuff just is so incredible. And just talking about a life and having somebody feel that they can change their life is a real privilege. I've done work for charity and gone out to an earthquake in Sumatra with Shelter Box. That's what they had, and we gave them tents. Life-changing. And I know that I wouldn't have been able to do it if I hadn't decided in the middle of the night that it was worth taking the risk of a death at sea. And last year, I had the opportunity of going out in a 68-foot ocean yacht, racing yacht, and crossed the North Atlantic. Very different, very foggy. And very recently, I trekked across the Pyrenees, and for somebody who has got a fear of heights, that was pretty good going. So really, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say, one, no hope on the boat. You know, hope isn't an action plan. If you want to change your life, go and change it. And always remember that it's not always what you do, it's what you inspire other people to do. Thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed listening.